inconsistency in relationships or being invested in a community, it just wreaks havoc because you have nothing's rooted. We weren't meant to just be shallow individuals. We have to get rooted.
Welcome to the Holy and Healthy Podcast. We are so glad you are listening. It is our prayer that this content is helpful to you. If it is, please follow us, leave us a review, share this with others that you'd like to join our community. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Hey, Caleb.
Hey, what's up?
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
How's your video game going?
Oh, It Takes Two.
Yeah.
It's going good. Alex and I played a couple nights ago. We're not playing as many nights as we used to because we're just busy and we got two beautiful girls and we're just taking care of them. And then I got projects and things like that. And so, but you know the Nintendo controller where you like can add the little Joy-Cons to the little plastic controller so that it's all one?
Those are sick.
Yeah, so we only had one, and Alex
Okay.
was using it because it made controlling the character a lot easier because it was like one unit rather than holding the two Joy-Cons in your separate hands.
Right.
And so I was doing the two Joy-Cons in separate hands and all that, and it was like I could like cross my arms while I'm playing and everything and all that good stuff, but it was like it made it hard to control the character, so we finally bought another one.
So she was operating fully efficiently because she had a controller.
Yeah.
And dude, I can't.
Have you ever used the Joy-Cons without one of those? Without
Yeah,
connected to something?
It's so tough.
Dude, it's weird, especially when you're using it, like, I know, because they're, like, motion devices, too, right? Where, like,
Mhm.
you can, like,
Yep.
swing a bat or whatever. Like, that makes sense to have them in each hand.
Right.
But when you're playing a video game where you're, like, running around and, like, trying to do things, and they're not connected to each other, it's frustrating.
It sort of feels wrong.
That's a sermon, honestly. We could figure that out. When you're not connected to the Vine, like a couple weeks ago.
Interesting. Dude, it feels so weird when you're playing Switch and you've got like floating controllers.
Yeah.
Unless it's turned sideways like Mario Kart, and you only have one of them.
Yeah.
It feels whack.
No, it's super weird. I got really good at it though, but we finally bought another one, so I'm happy about that.
Good. I mean, they're only like $20 on Amazon. So.
Yeah, and I'm actually bummed because I didn't realize that Nintendo makes one, like Nintendo themselves.
Yeah.
And I'm like a brand guy, and I bought a knockoff, and I didn't even know it, but it was in a box that was fully branded like Nintendo.
Nice.
So it's not a Nintendo one, but it is. I don't know how that works.
Yeah, but it's also like, it's going to be the same product anyway.
No, it's exactly the same.
It's like when Randy Deal, pharmacist on staff, he's not actually our pharmacist on staff.
He's
He
our
just
staff
happens
pharmacist.
to be- he just happens to be a pharmacist. He told me to never buy name brand stuff because it's literally the same thing. They just put the name brand on it.
I agree. I never buy name brand. If I don't have to, I don't buy name brand medication.
Yeah.
But for some reason, like Nintendo, Xbox, whatever, like I want their stuff.
Makes sense.
I don't know. I was just whatever.
This is a fantastic way to start.
Yeah,
a
like
very
you don't want
important
knockoff
podcast
Cheez-Its,
episode.
right?
I mean, it depends.
No, come on. Have you had knockoff Cheez-Its?
I mean, I've not necessarily had like cheese squares, like cheese nips. Have you ever had those?
Yeah, those are knockoffs.
Yeah, but they're fire.
No, they're not.
Dude, cheese nips
Oh
are better
my
than cheese.
No, they're not.
Dude, 100%.
Okay, whatever.
You
Then-
know I'm a cheese cracker guy.
I
love goldfish.
You eat your goldfish every night.
Dude, you ever
I get
had
it.
whales?
Yeah.
Bro, whales are fire.
Okay, whales are good. Is that who
f-
makes those?
I don't know. Trader Joe's has their own version of goldfish,
Okay.
and they're little rockets.
Oh,
Bro,
I bet those are good.
they're next level.
Dude, Trader Joe's does everything right.
They do everything right in very small portions.
Yeah.
Yeah, you
you're so
buy
right.
like that whole bag, and it's like done in
That's
2.5
so true.
minutes. So.
Do you think that's why it's cheaper? Like it's this illusion of like I get the same size bag and it's costs like $2 less than if I went to Fry's or Kroger store or wherever you're at in the world and you get your groceries, but there's just less product in it.
I mean, that might have something to do with it. Might just be their business.
Or is it their
strategy
thing
too.
of being like healthy, like portion control?
I mean, probably, but I feel like the true healthy stuff like Sprouts is like super expensive.
Yeah.
Also, I've never shopped at Sprouts, so
Maybe I've gone in and gotten like bulk oatmeal.
with like my Ian, like we would go sometimes to Sprouts to get like deli sandwiches because they were really cheap. But that's the only time I've ever been.
That sounds yummy.
I mean, they were fine.
Want to get lunch today?
I'm not available for lunch today. Otherwise, I would, and I also brought my lunch. So
Okay, cool. Never mind.
yeah. Thanks for joining us today, guys. We are very, very excited. We do have content ready to talk about.
Yeah, we do.
Um, Today we're talking about the idea of investment versus consistency. What does that mean, Caleb?
Investment versus consistency. So when I got to wrap my head around this a little bit too,
Okay.
like the versus thing. So like they're at odds with each other.
Yeah. So not necessarily at odds. I think people, it's more so definitions.
Okay.
I think people would say that consistency equals investment,
Okay.
but I don't think those two things
Oh yeah, yeah,
are synonymous.
yeah, yeah. They're different.
So in my mind, I equate it to the idea of just because you show up somewhere consistently doesn't mean you're invested there
Absolutely.
consistently.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I mean, having a tough job that you really don't like,
Yeah.
you show up every week doesn't mean you're fully invested
Yeah, yeah. You might be
into that job.
consistent, but you're not. You're not like in it.
Exactly.
Your head's not there.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No. Totally. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That does. They are different. You can't interchange the words or anything.
For sure. And that's
Um,
why it's kind of like versus.
yeah.
So
But you marry them together, and you get a beautiful thing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Consistent investment is probably the greatest asset to anyone who's looking to make a difference in their career,
Yeah.
in the people that they work with, the people they live with, the people they interact with. Like if you are consistently yourself and also invested into what you're doing,
Yeah.
then that's when you start seeing dividends.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it usually is on the other side of the consistency that you for a good period of time.
Yep.
And good period of time for you and me. Like a lot of we're in a very fast-paced world.
True.
Like we move really fast, like 100
Very.
miles an hour all the time, every day. You know, we even speed through our Bible times and all of that. We're like, all right, okay, I got 20 minutes.
Everything's
Let's get
about
through
being
this.
as efficient as possible. Yep.
And so to be somewhere for a long time, like be consistent, whether it's at a job, honestly, for some people in a relationship,
Yeah.
uh, in your faith, things like that, that kind of consistency, it's just hard to come by.
Mm-hmm.
And we think it's like, oh man, I've been in this job for like 6 months. It's like, great. And like, I just can't believe I haven't been promoted. Yeah, me neither. Like, no, like you've been in the job for 6 months. Like, chill out. You don't even know what you're doing still.
Yeah.
But we tend, and most conversations I'm in lend themselves towards like a very short period of time. For some reason, it's feeling like a very long period of time.
Yeah. No, dude, I agree. We, especially out here in Arizona, I think just with the culture we're in, I don't think financially it helps out a lot for young adults in the climate today trying to make a living
Yeah.
because of the situation. I understand wanting to get paid more, wanting to have more responsibility, but that comes with time.
Oh yeah,
Growing up in Oklahoma, it's a lot slower.
yeah. I was gonna
It-
say you're probably experiencing like when you moved, there was probably a bit of a change of pace.
That was the biggest shift for me. Like, I grew up in a town of 30,000 people. Now I think it's closer to 50. We really had like 4 or 5 main roads,
Hmm.
like east and west roads
Yeah.
that went like only 4 miles. So it's a really, really small town that I grew up in. And for the most part, I knew a decent amount of the people that lived there because I played football my whole life in a bunch of different clubs and
Mhm.
was at the same church forever. And watching the people, you kind of had the same job.
Yeah.
Like you didn't really change jobs a lot. One, because there weren't that many jobs
Yeah.
because it was a small town. But also, like, people just understood the value of really working hard and showing up to
Yeah.
work.
Yep.
I think one, because it was so just family oriented town because it was so built around families. So it's you almost like you're born there, and a lot of people stay there because of that.
Yeah.
And then moving out here, dude, it was probably one of the fastest moving places I've ever been to.
Yeah.
Phoenix is hustling. especially right now
Yeah.
with everybody moving here.
Oh yeah. It's crazy all over.
But I think I think detrimentally it affects our mindset and not just how fast paced we live. Bro, you walk into any restaurant, there's a mobile pickup, there's a DoorDasher, there's like people who don't want to wait in lines. If
Yeah.
the line's like 6 people at Chipotle, you're like, oh
Oh yeah.
goodness, why do I gotta wait in line?
Yeah.
It's like this just used to be normal. You used to show up and like wait for in lines for stuff, and it was fine.
Yeah.
Like even Carly and I will be in like a drive-through line, and it takes 8 minutes, and we're like, ah, this is
Yeah.
so annoying.
Why is this taking so long?
I know, and it's like,
Yeah.
dude, it took 8 minutes to get our food. Like what?
Yeah.
We didn't have to wait at home and cook it. It'd take way longer at home.
Yeah.
But I think like the state of convenience
Yeah.
in our minds is so highly elevated when it comes to any space that it almost tricks our brain
Yeah.
to the spaces where we need to work hard. Convenience also takes over.
Yeah.
And I think we've lost the value of hard work
Sure.
and consistency with the investment piece.
Yeah.
Because I just don't know if we know fully how to
Yeah.
make an investment.
Yeah. So when you're talking about investment, like first, one thing we're not talking about is money right now.
No.
That's not where we're going with this. Eventually,
Different episode.
Different episode that'll come in. Awesome guy will probably come in who works here, who
Yep.
runs all of our churches and a couple other churches' finances. And
Yes.
he's just genius.
Much better than us, yes.
Yeah, so much
For
so.
sure.
I told him about the sidebar. I told him about some of my own financial situation, and he kind of like rolled his eyes at me, and I was like, "Ah, dang it, dang it! All right, I
Bro,
gotta
you
some
can't
changes got to be
You
made."
can't be telling Todd your
I
financial
know,
situation.
I
dude.
wanted his advice, and it was like, dang it. All right, you're right.
Asking his advice is asking for a
I know, but he's smart, so he's always right. Listen to
for
him.
sure.
But
What I just said there almost made it sound like he's a bad dude and
Oh,
he's
no,
gonna
he's-
lecture you. No, he's
No, no.
literally probably the best guy on staff.
no, he'll be so gentle, he'll be so kind, but he'll tell you exactly what you should be doing with your money because he's so wicked smart with it.
As he should.
and I'm not wicked smart with it.
That's fine.
I'm not terrible, but I'm not smart.
What you
Anyway,
were saying about investment.
So investment. This is like investment into your community. This is investment into your family. This is investment into your relationships. This is investment into your job. That
Exactly.
kind of stuff. And what that means for you and for me. And
Yeah.
to be holy and healthy, I do think involves a certain degree of consistency and investment
yes,
into what you're doing and where you're at, where God has you.
100%. Yes, and it all comes from this idea as I was sitting over this passage in Matthew 25 where Jesus has this parable of 3 servants who work for a king, and the king's going away for, I think it's a week. And is it a week? I think it's a week.
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
For a certain amount of time. And he wants to leave some of his money in the hands of 3 trusted servants. So he gives 5 bags of gold to one, he gives 2 bags of gold to another, and he gives 1 bag of gold to another servant, which I think we don't talk about this a lot, but I think one of the things that makes us upset when it comes to our investment and consistency is looking at what other people have been given, and we almost like compare ourselves to those. But I think what you see out of this passage is the guy who got 5 ends up turning it into 10, and the guy who got 2 ends up turning it into 4. If you do that in multiplication standards, it's the same. Like it's they doubled what they got.
Yeah.
So actually they did with it what was asked of them, regardless of if it turned into 10 or 4. The one guy who gets 1 bag buries his bag.
Yeah.
He puts his money in the dirt. It doesn't interest. Nothing happens to it. King gets back. He pulls it out, and he's like, hey, aren't you glad that I kept safe what was yours? And he's like, not really, because these other dudes, they doubled their money. And he actually takes the 1 bag away from the one guy, and he gives it to the guy who has 10. And it's this really cool story in parable, and in Matthew 25 is where we get the phrase, well done, good and faithful servant.
Mm-hmm.
Which then is really cool, and that's what we say, like, hopefully is said of our lives when we get to heaven, that God will say to us, well done, good and faithful servant, because of how we lived our life. After this parable, Jesus goes into this time of talking about these scenarios where he says, when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me water. When I was naked, you gave me clothing. And he's like, the righteous will say, when did we ever do that? Like, when were you naked, bro? We
Yeah.
never saw you naked. And Jesus is like, no, no, no. When you did this for the least of these, you did it to me.
Mm.
And then he keeps going and he talks about, when I was naked, you didn't give me clothing. When I was thirsty, you didn't give me water. When I was hungry, you didn't give me food. And the unrighteous will say, when did we ever not do those things? And he's like, well, when you didn't do it to
Mm.
the least of these, you didn't do it to me. And I think it's really cool correlation that there's this parable of investing,
Yeah.
and we like to use it for money, but Jesus then turns it into, no, no, no. I'm not talking about any material right now. I'm not talking about maybe your gifts or your talents. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about your life. How do you invest your life? And then he
Mm.
goes into how do you live with people?
Mm-hmm.
How do you treat people? Because how you're treating people is ultimately how are you going to treat me?
Yeah.
And I think investment, if we're going to take it in how Jesus defines it, is how are we living our life centered around how are we really treating other people?
Yeah.
What does that look like for us? So, really, I think that takes that word investment to another level
Mm-hmm.
of, oh, this is different than just maybe one choice here, one choice there. It's just like this encompasses my life.
Yeah. It's all of your life,
Yep.
and what you do with it matters. I think we were talking about that a little bit, and even in some of your sidebar notes, you were talking about, man, it just matters. It matters
Yeah.
a lot.
Yes.
We can't just walk through life thinking that didn't matter, or that conversation didn't matter, or the way I treated that person didn't matter, or that was just a customer who came through the window. I'll never see him again. Like that didn't matter. No, it matters.
Yep.
It's shaping who you are. It's reinforcing who you're choosing to be and what you're allowing in and what you're allowing out, and the way you love and care for people and the way you display Christ to other people and all of that. So it's wildly important to look at your life and say, am I taking this thing seriously? This gift that I've been given by God, the miracle that is waking up every morning and taking a breath, like it matters.
Yeah.
And we need to be mindful of it. And if you're on any kind of journey of following Christ to be holy and healthy and to be all that God's called you to be, then that's going to be a part of it.
Yeah. It's not only going to be a part of it, it's going to be all of it. I mean, you have to. I think we're all investing our life in something, but it
Oh,
might
yeah.
not be the right thing. It might not be the right way either. And understanding that your life isn't even fully your own. We've talked about it before that we're not bodies that have souls, we're souls that have bodies, and we have them for a certain amount of time that have been gifted to us. So our investment is kind of giving the gift back to the one who gave it to us. It's giving our life back. And I think it is so important to realize that we talk about it a lot when it comes to leadership stuff here at church, but I think just in general, we're always creating culture
Yeah.
when it comes to our job. This is for anyone listening who leads a business or eventually wants to, or is even just working at a company in any form or fashion. We're always creating culture with what we say, what we do, how we act, how we think, all of those things. Every conversation matters because it's creating some sort of culture, because culture either happens by default or by design. And I think our life is very similar. The culture of our life, the quality of our life is being made by the quality of our investment when it comes to our words, our actions, and every single part of that matters. It's almost like if you put it in money terms and thinking of stocks and different investments, it's almost like when we are living for Jesus, we are putting more equity into
Mm.
that stock.
Yeah.
But when we don't, it's almost like we're pulling money out.
Mm.
And I think if we are going to live a life where we're super highly invested into the stock of our true faith,
Yeah.
in, like Jesus says, putting our treasures in heaven,
Mm-hmm.
I think when we act selfishly on earth, it's almost like we're pulling that back
Yeah.
and putting treasure back into the world, which we don't get to take.
Yeah. So, what do you think is the primary thing that is pulling us away from being able to be like invested and be consistently doing that? Like,
I think one of the hard things is investment is always a long-term thinking.
Yep.
You don't invest in something you want tomorrow.
correct.
It's just that would be a really, really bad business plan to start your retirement today and try to pull it out tomorrow.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
you're not going to make any money.
Yeah.
So I think the hard part is with investment, you have to always be forward thinking a lot
Yeah.
and realize that my work today, it might not look like it's going to pay off in the future,
Yeah.
but a lot of that is having to come to terms in our own mind saying, okay, I'm going to do all the things I know I need to do today so that in the future it actually pays off. It's a really really hard way of thinking. We talked about it the other few podcasts ago. We talked about your why though. You
Mhm.
talked about your girls. You eventually one day wanted to be able to walk them down the aisle, and there's
Yeah.
certain things that you want to change and be able to have your life look like. So you have to make certain decisions today.
Yeah.
But I think investment in we have to get to the point where we're I think able
Yeah.
and available to walk through certain sucky parts of the now
Yeah.
so that we can have those things at the end. I think the hardest one to get over initially is just realizing that my if I really want to make an impact and a difference, my investment I can't be fully wrapped around me.
Yeah. No, I think that's super good. And that brings in kind of the idea and thought of the people you surround yourself with, the
Hmm.
community you're in, and the friendships you have. I really like using this example lately of asking people, hey, think of like someone you're really close with,
Yeah.
like a best friend or a spouse if you're married or something like that, or just someone you trust your life with and you know super well and you call them for everything and you just know even if you didn't talk for like 2 years, you could pick up the phone and just pick up where you left off.
Hmm.
And usually people can think of like one or two people and they're like, oh my goodness, and their like face lights up and they're like this person. And the next question I asked, well, how long have you known them? They're like, oh man, we lived together for like 6 years, or we've been best friends for the last like decade. And it's like, there you go. How long is that? Like, that's a long time. 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, people you've been with. I was just on my phone with my papa who lives in Tucson, and he just turned 85 the other day.
Wow.
And he told me that his buddy turned 85 like a few days before or something. And he was talking to him on the phone for a long time today or something. And he was telling me that they've been friends for 35 years. They started going to the same church in Tucson together 35
Oh
years
my
ago,
gosh.
and they served as ushers together. And the he was like, yeah, we talked forever, and we were just talking all the time and reminiscing and going over memories and all of this stuff. And that's 35. That's 3 decades of life together and knowing each other. You don't get that without that time.
Mm-mm.
And people want to uh, particularly one thing I've noticed is like there's this lack of depth in friendship, and it's like, man, I want to be in community, or I want to have a home group or a small group or whatever. I don't know what language you want to put to it, but just people in your life that you want to be super close to. And you're like, okay, well, how long have you been a part of this group or friend group that you've had? Oh, we've been friends for like 6 months. Or we've been meeting once a month for the last 6 months or 3 months or
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm like, well, what do you expect to happen? Like, just you wanted to meet 3 times, and then all of a sudden you're sharing deep, dark secrets, and you're like trusting each other with the inner depths of who you are. No, that's not how it works.
Right.
You don't build that fast. And if you do, it's probably fabricated or manipulated in some sort of way. It just doesn't happen. So put in the time, put in the work, go through the pleasantries. A lot of Christians who I talk to will get really frustrated because like it's all surface conversation. Like all we do is like, oh, how's your family? How's your kids? Or how's work? Or oh, you got a new job. That's super cool. Blah 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 blah. And it's just pleasantries. It's like, yeah, that's how relationships start. Like
Right.
you don't get to the deep without having to explore the surface. It's all about building trust, and you got to figure this thing out, and you got to figure out, well, is this person who's going to be in it for the long haul? We're testing each other out even in our friendships, and as we develop new relationships, we're trying to figure out, is this going to be someone who sticks it out? And so we're going to test the waters. We're going to just do the pleasantries, and if we make it past that, then maybe we'll try something deep, maybe a little bit later, but not too deep, because we got to see how they handle it. And that's kind of the natural progression of a relationship. That's why in 10, 20 years, you can look at a friendship that you've had for that long and go, I would give my life for that person.
Yeah.
Because the relationship is just so, so deep and it has gone through the test of time. There are things you can't get without time.
Yeah. Well, I would say that even you and me, we met almost 5 years ago now.
Yeah.
Which is wild to even think about. But our relationship, I think over the last like 2 years, has
Hmm.
gotten so much stronger and
Oh
better
yeah.
just because we've been able to have more conversations that have led to that. But it didn't start that way.
No.
Bro, if we take this as an idea of like an iceberg, they always do those iceberg
Yeah.
things.
I love
A lot
iceberg
of
analogies.
a
They're
lot of
great.
the leadership. It's like
Yeah.
it's at the bottom of the
Yeah.
iceberg.
Bottom of the iceberg.
But the bottom's always bigger than the top, dude. If you try to go straight to the bottom, bro, you're freaking Titanicing that iceberg.
Yeah.
Like that's not.
You just can't.
One, it's gonna be really awkward for
Yeah.
everybody on board.
No, it's so weird to try to go super deep, super fast.
Yeah.
Like it's abrasive, it's difficult, and
It's
unless
like, oh,
you're
you want to sink?
yeah,
Okay.
unless you're a professional counselor and you're sitting across from your client, like
Yeah.
you just don't go there
No.
because it just takes time.
Yeah.
And that's the beauty of it because there's also this you can't be best friends and super deep with everybody. And there's kind of this really cool like thing where we have agency and we get to kind of choose who we're friends with and who we spend time with and all of that. And so there's this special like beauty of the people you choose to spend your time with.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to get that. Like, nobody has the same access to me as my wife. Like, Alex has full access, and there really isn't anybody else who has the same kind of access that she has.
Right.
And that's because we have this beautiful thing called marriage and a covenant relationship between each other, and
Yeah.
we're doing life together, and we're going to raise these girls together, and we're going to spend the rest of our lives together. And that's just not the luxury anybody else has for either one of us.
Yeah.
But there's, I'm looking for the word exclusivity.
Mm-hmm.
That can be a really negative word. But in the case of like deep rooted friendships and relationships, like there's an exclusiveness to it because you can't have it with everybody.
And it makes things more valuable.
Absolutely. It puts so much more value on your relationship.
Yep.
Like think about the person who is literally just like surface level friends with everybody. Like they will hang out with anybody. They'll give any amount of time to anybody anytime. And again, we're writing a line here because there's a certain level of hospitality and generosity and kindness that followers of Christ should be displaying and living out.
Sure. Yeah.
But like, if you're a friend to all, you're a friend to none.
Yeah. Valid.
And so to reserve some of that depth and that time that it takes to get there for a certain few, like there's a beauty to it because everybody has it and everybody has a chance to have it.
Is that friend of all a friend of none a Taylor Swift line?
It might be. Yeah. But I don't know. She probably stole it from someone.
Probably.
I
don't know why.
I've
you
definitely
said
heard
that.
it.
I think
I've heard
it's
it
from
before.
one of her albums.
It probably is, but I'm a big Taylor Swift fan,
Dude,
so
you
whatever.
s-
Am I
you
even
s-
allowed to be a Taylor Swift fan anymore?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay, cool.
you can be. It depends on who's listening, if they'll listen anymore, but whatever.
Okay, for the record, I love Taylor Swift.
Dude, that is so funny.
Um,
Talk about investment into craft. I mean, she absolutely is bonkers. when
Oh
it
yeah,
comes to
dude.
that.
And she's been going at it for what, like
20 years.
20 years now? Like,
So
come on.
The most dedicated fan base of all time
yeah.
and all that.
Like
Yeah.
whatever. I was just so I was looking up a map because this came into my mind.
Of course,
About-
Taylor Swift is on the podcast.
Yeah, duh. But now we're going to talk about Jesus. So, Jesus, when you look at his life and his ministry, he had 3 years, roughly.
Yeah.
Scholars tell us that. He traveled around, did his thing, and did all the parables, all his teaching, saving people, all that good stuff. So, he did all of this, all the God things he did. He did it all in really, like, not a huge scope of space.
Right.
Like, he didn't go very far. I think it was something like a 20-mile square radius or something. Like,
Yeah, I
he
mean,
really didn't make it
Kind of all
very
around
far.
the Sea of Galilee.
Yeah,
Wasn't very big.
exactly.
Yeah.
And he changed the world. He changed
Yep,
the world.
for sure.
Like, he didn't go very far. And he literally changed the world. You and I are sitting here today having this conversation. We work at a church, and we have given our lives to this man who claims to be God and gave his life on the cross and conquered death. Like, he changed the world. And he did it by not going very far. Now, they were bound by how far their legs could take them back
Sure.
in that day.
Yeah.
And we have airplanes and boats and cars and all these things that can take us all over the world. I'm
Right.
pretty sure you can get anywhere in the world in like 12 hours, 14 hours, something. I think the longest flight is like 14 hours.
Oh, really?
Yeah, something like that. So it's crazy. You can get anywhere very fast. And
Yeah.
I mean, we can get to the moon in like a day. I don't even know. Sorry, I'm
I
actually.
think it takes longer than a day
Hold
to
on,
get to
hold
the
on,
moon.
hold on. I got Google in
Now,
front of me.
if it takes a day to get to the moon, then I want to go
Hold
because
on,
then I
hold
could just come
on. Okay,
back.
I'm so sorry. Anybody listening to this, if you're fact checking me, I'm correcting myself right now. It takes, according to coolcosmos.edu,
Not a
it takes
sponsor.
about 3 days to
Okay,
get to the moon.
sounds a little bit,
Okay,
but still 3 days.
3 days.
I want to go to the moon. If it takes 3 days, I gotta be back in a week.
Yeah. Do you know how long it took Jesus to get from Judea all the way to Galilee or whatever? Like, not 3 days. I don't know. I don't know how long that walk takes. But anyways, all I'm saying,
He was bound to a certain place in
yes,
time at
and
a
he's
certain time, and the ability to get places was not
yeah.
very easy.
That's the point I'm trying to make. But he was rooted. He had to be. Like
Yeah,
everybody in those areas knew him,
exactly.
and that's where all his disciples went, and that's where they changed the world. That's where it started. And he spent his whole life in that area and changed the world in 3 years.
Yep.
Like that's crazy.
Yep.
And we're over here like, man, I want to change the world in 6 months, and I want to travel the country
Yeah.
or the world. I want to travel the countries and go overseas, and I want to be in this state and that state, and I want to do that and this and that. Well, man, when you move around so much, it's hard.
Yeah. Well, and I think if we take the person of Jesus as the person of Jesus, don't not separating the God out of who he is, but take the baby who was born to the man who then did ministry at 30 years old.
Yeah.
Around there. For the first, from 30 years, 18 years before that, homie had to study.
Mm-hmm.
He had to he had to learn the Torah.
Yeah.
He had to learn the scriptures.
Oh,
He
yeah.
had to be able to memorize them by 12 or something like that. He had to be able to teach them eloquently and,
Yeah.
and have an ability to be able to do that. And it took him a very long period of his adolescence into his young adult years to be able to do that. And
Yeah.
at 30 years old, he starts his career.
Yeah.
A lot of people probably listening says, maybe not aren't even 30 years old. And
I'm not even 30.
You're not even 30.
Praise God. Let's go.
You're close.
Stop it. I'm 29. Don't. Not 30. Not 30.
But still, like you can't even look at Jesus and say that he had his career early on. He
Yep.
still had to put in work.
Yep.
I mean, his father, stonemason carpenter, like there's so many different things you can equate to having to invest your time.
Oh, yeah.
I think there are a few principles that we can take from someone like Jesus,
Yeah.
and think anybody who's successful and makes a difference in your life.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot at Rock Point. I think a lot of other churches might use it. But when you look at the biblical way to invest, that 4 words kind of pop up.
Yep.
And thankfully they all start with the same letter. So
Oh, let's go.
pastors, it makes it easy. But a lot of churches, specifically here at Rock Point, we believe that to invest, it takes your time, your talent,
Mm-hmm.
your treasure.
Mm-hmm.
And some people stop there. But I believe the 4th one is probably most important, your testimony. So you look at Jesus, he came at a certain period of time.
Yep.
He had to spend a certain period of time working on his own education and his own craft to be able to teach well. I mean, could you imagine Jesus not doing his homework on the scriptures and then like getting up to teach and then he just messes up?
Yeah, no.
And incorrectly quotes Isaiah.
Yeah, no, he didn't do that.
Yeah, he's God, but also like he's a human being who could have possibly not done that if he. I mean, I'm putting a theoretical out there that Jesus could mess up, but I mean technically he could mess up if he wanted to.
Yeah, I mean he was a rabbi, so he knew things. He had a way of teaching, and he had a following.
Yeah,
and people wanted to hear what he had to say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
but yeah, it takes so much time. So you said time, talent, treasure, and testimony.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Let's start with time.
Yep.
Maybe not too much because I think the latter or the former part of what we just talked about was all about like a lot of time.
Sure.
But your time.
Yep.
Go.
Yeah, this isn't like, I know. Yeah, we did talk a lot about it. If we have a short amount of time, I think I'll just hit on these things. But your time has been given to you. You don't know when it ends.
Yeah.
You weren't there when it began.
Yeah.
And we have the ability to only exist in today.
Hmm.
So I think we try to think of our days and our weeks based on the time that they have and we allot to them. But how do we use the time that we are
Yeah.
awake in ways that honors how God has asked us to live a holy and healthy life?
Yeah.
So we have a 24-hour days. It's usually shut down to at least 18 hours because of our sleep.
Yeah.
So how are we using that to benefit other people, to benefit the kingdom?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, this is so good.
yeah,
I was just listening to a pastor who I respect a ton, and he was talking about these two different kind of ways of thinking, I guess, or things that people would say about you.
yeah,
And he was like, a lot of things, like there's resume builders, and then there's eulogy builders, or things like that. And a
interesting.
eulogy is something that is
At
usually
the end
read
of
at
your,
your
yeah,
memorial when you pass away and everything. And he was talking about how usually the things that we spend a lot of time on now, like we just invest a ton of time in it, is our resume builders. Like, oh, I did this, I did that, I built that, I worked for this long, I took this company from this place to this place, or I took this team to this place and that place, and like just all these accolades of, oh my goodness, this person's so good at this and so good at that, and they did this and then they did that, and that's like what we go after,
mm,
especially when you're young. Like you were just going after it. You're like, I'm building my resume
yeah,
so that I add as much value to who I am as a person, and I can like keep making more money or whatever. And then he was talking about eulogy things, like eulogy decisions or builders, and oftentimes those are the things we neglect, like because he was looking back on a memorial that he went to, and basically, honestly, this guy, he didn't say the name, but it was obvious because it was a relatively recent podcast. He was at Tim Keller's Tim
whoa,
Keller's private family um, memorial,
mm,
and he went to it only because his dad knew Tim Keller. He didn't actually know Tim Keller or anything, but his family was invited, so they went, and everything that everyone said in that private family one had nothing to do with what we all know about Tim Keller. Like his books and
yeah,
what he did for the Christian faith and his teachings and all of that, like there wasn't a lick of it.
mm,
Everybody was telling stories about dad, about grandpa,
mm,
about going to the beach or going to the park or whatever. And he started to reflect on this and go, oh my goodness, what am I building?
huh,
Because the people I care about the most, what are they going to say about me? Are they going to be able to talk about dad? Are they going to be able to talk about grandpa or whatever?
mm,
Or are they just going to talk about the fact that all I cared about was teaching and preaching, or, uh, working in the church or building my resume? No, they're going to care about so much things that are so much deeper and more important.
mm.
So, what are you doing with your time? Are you building your resume, or are you building your eulogy?
You're just looking at me, and I'm just
Huh?
like, dang, that's crazy.
I know, it was fascinating to me, like when I was listening to it, because it was like this gut check of
Yeah,
like, what do I do with my late 20s ambition to do great things and blah blah blah. But at the same time, man, I got to make sure if I die tomorrow, would my wife be like, man, he was the most loving husband I could ever imagine, and would my girls be like, man, I love my dad, and he always played with me, and he always took care of me, and we just had so much fun together. Like,
mm,
whoa,
yeah.
yeah, you know,
How do you think someone practically lives out their life in light of a eulogy instead of accolades and a resume?
I think you got to look at like what's most important to you, and you really got to ask yourself that question. And if you're young and you're literally your answer is the most important thing to do is just make a bunch of money, like go reevaluate, because that's not the answer. We know that. We don't have to figure that out on our own. We have thousands and thousands of godly, amazing people who have lived life for the last 2 millennia to tell us that life is not about money.
Yeah.
Life is not about accolades. Not life is not about fame and fortune. All of that. There's so much more to life. There's something so much deeper, and even all over the pages of Scripture, we see that everywhere. And so, you really got to get to a point where you're like, okay, the most important things to me, like they're going to be your relationships. They're going to be people closest to you. It's going to be the way you display the love of Christ to other people. It's the way you, in the language of the New Testament, like die to self, serve others, and pick up your cross, and that kind of stuff. Like that's the life.
Mm,
So, are your decisions and the things you're doing taking you down that route?
yeah.
That's what I think would be a great question,
Hmm.
because those are the kind of things that are going to build the kind of character that at the end of life, like, you were a beautiful soul that people are going to miss dearly, but you're with the king of the world. So, they're all happy and hopeful for you as well.
Hmm. There's
I
got to
don't,
be a piece of you that has more to life than just the current state of events.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I even think about it, like, have you seen the movie Elf?
Yeah.
This just popped in my head. Everybody's seen Elf. Elf's so good. At the end of the movie, when Walter Hobbs, Elf's buddy's
Yeah.
dad,
Yeah. Yeah.
is all like, you know what? Forget this. My job's not worth not being with my family on Christmas.
Right.
And he just walks out of the room, and his boss, Mr. Greenway or whatever, is like, you walk out of this room, you're done. And he's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
Like, it's moments like we resonate with that moment. Like, I think people, when you watch that movie, in the elf world and all that, you watch that movie and you're like, yes, finally, he gets it. And the question becomes like, well, do you get it?
Yeah.
Like, do you get it? Do you get that when you're at home and your kids are talking to you and you're on your phone responding to an email or whatever? Do you realize that you are throwing away some beautiful moment for an email for work?
Yeah.
And I don't think we realize that. It's really hard to catch that. It's really hard to realize that. And what's awesome is, so my daughter, she's almost 3, and her name's Nora, and she's amazing because she can get my wife and I to realize really quickly that we are not living out what we value most.
Whoa.
Because if we're on our phone or a computer or watching something and we're not we're not there, we're not invested in the family and what's happening in the home, my daughter will be like, Dad, get off your phone.
Of course she does.
Dad, shut the computer. She'll just do that. Or, Mom, turn off the TV. Like, things like that. She'll
Yeah.
literally just say it.
Until Uncle Hunter brings his phone out to watch football.
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Then she's like, oh, yeah, I'm watching football with Hunter. But it's like this reminder, and very, like, surreal one,
Yeah, I mean,
that my daughter, who's 3 years old, is already picking up the fact that I am more invested in what's going on my phone than I am on her right next to me. Oh, dude, that'll hurt.
for real.
Like, that'll get you. And it's the thing when, like, your spouse says you don't spend any time with me, and you're like on your phone when you're doing it, and then you're like really frustrated, and you're like, why did you say it that way? And blah 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 blah, and you get this little tip about it. It's all rooted in the fact that, man, maybe you're not invested at home.
Yeah.
And at the end of your life, what's gonna matter? The email you sent, the career you built, or the fact that you have a thriving, happy, wonderful, beautiful, God-honoring marriage?
That's so good.
Yeah. So, time's huge.
Dang. I love just like sometimes just listening to people talk, and specifically you in this moment, just like listening to like all the words, just trying to intently understand. And I think when it comes to our time in any of these, really, I think it just comes down to like just ask yourself, like, what are your actions? What do you spend the most time doing? Because that's what you're going to be most invested in.
Yeah.
And do you like those things?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm like the worst at this. Like, I don't. My wife's like love language is quality time, and I'm just so bad. I wish I was better. And it's one of those things where, even talking about it, it's like I don't want to put on some facade that, oh man, I got it all figured out. Like, I spent all this time with my kids and all this stuff. No, I just told you, like, my daughter constantly tells me to get off my phone, put things away. Like, Dad, I want to play, and my selfish mind and body just goes, I don't know if I want to. I want to get this done. This is on my mind. I'm very obsessive, all that stuff, and so it's really hard for me to like make that switch in my head. And so, by all no means do I have this perfect, but at the end of the day, like, I do know that I'm trending in the right direction, and I'm aware enough to know that, like, this is something that is wildly important to me.
Yeah.
And it'll take a lifetime to perfect.
For sure. That's okay. You don't have to be perfect.
Mm.
We can strive for it, but we won't be. Let's talk about talents.
Talents. Oh.
Did you just break the stand, bro?
I'm sorry. If it just picked that up, I'm sorry.
I don't know if it did, but
Okay, talent. We all have
fun to
gifts.
watch.
We all have things.
Yes.
Right? Like, what's the passage in the gifts passage? Dang it. What is it?
Spiritual gifts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has that whole list of, like,
Yeah,
leadership,
totally.
use it, all of that. Man, I wish I could just like pull passages, like their references out of my head. Like I want that.
Yeah.
Anyway, but we all have gifts. We all been
Yes.
given things that we're naturally good at, we're talented in. Like people who play music blow my mind. Like I don't know how anybody plays an instrument. It doesn't make any sense to me. But like people are talented and they're gifted with it. So how do you invest and be consistent in your talent? What does that look like for you in your head? And when you think about like young adults and people who are young professionals, early 20s, late 20s, early 30s, like that kind of period of their life where
Yeah.
like ambition is just driving you and like everything is like I need to succeed.
Yeah.
Talent, how do you use that?
Yeah. I would separate it from skill,
Okay.
because skill is something that you work on
Okay, yeah, yeah,
and you sort of create on your own. I have a skill now to do like woodwork and things when it comes to projects outside, because that's something
yeah.
that I've done since I was little with my dad.
Oh, cool.
I have different skills when it comes to other things. Like I can play an instrument, that's a skill. I think talents are things that you're naturally good at,
Okay.
and natural passions that you don't even have to think of or
Mm.
worry about. I think that that's what helps some people when it comes to the gym and being healthy. Some people
Mm.
are naturally wired to just want to do that more.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Um, and I think like that's awesome. I am naturally more wired to be like just really relaxed and like
Definitely.
trying to just like I'll have any conversation at any time because I love to talk,
Yeah.
and I'm just naturally really good at having one-on-one conversations. Some people aren't good at that.
Facts.
And so I think we have to figure out your talent is usually what you're naturally good at or just naturally passionate about. So
Mm.
if we're going to talk about those, I think one that can fall if this falls into your career and your job, whatever occupation you have, and you're naturally good at it, like that's like next level.
Yeah.
Able to do that. I feel like that's what I have. I feel
Yeah.
like that's
You just
what you
you
have.
like you just cheat code
Yes,
unlocked.
it is a
Yeah.
cheat code.
Your talent, the thing you're naturally good at, is also the thing that gives you the ability to have an income and live life.
Yeah, and I think that that's the ideal situation. Now,
Absolutely.
that's not for everyone. So I think how do you able to invest your talent? I think the cool part about how God wired us is most of the things we are talented in
Mm-hmm.
have to immediately affect other people.
Mm.
I'm not sure if I'm talented in any way that just affects me. I'm
Mm.
literally trying to think about it right now. Is there anything that I'm talented in that just no, there's not. I'm not good at anything by myself, I don't think.
Mm.
Now, could I offer something for myself by myself? Sure. But I think the best version of me is using my talents for other people, because I think my talents only benefit other people.
Yeah.
And
Like I
Yeah.
just had this thought
Yeah.
like randomly popped in my head. I think about like a chef, an incredibly talented chef, like
Yeah.
just so gifted. Like they can just cook meals, and every restaurant wants them, and they could probably make like six figures just cooking
Yeah.
food for people because they're just so good at making food. If they just did that for themselves, it's like, well, what the heck? What's the point?
Yeah.
Like, why would you do that? And
It's just cooking meals for yourself. I mean,
Yeah,
it
dude,
gets boring after a
yeah,
while.
I can
There's
cook.
nothing
I can
fulfilling
cook meals
about
for
that.
myself.
Yeah.
But one of the blessings of like this incredible chef is, man, they get to use their gift to put food on other people's plate and see them enjoy it and just honestly like soak it all in. Because when you eat something really good, like you know it was good. Like you guys just went to Toca Madera for Carly's birthday, right?
Yes, that is true.
And Carly told me you got the burger.
Yes.
Yeah, dude, this restaurant, this burger, I'm telling you, it's one of those things that
If you're
I
ever in
still think
Scottsdale,
about.
you have
Yeah.
to go.
Is it only in Scottsdale, Toca Madera, or is there a couple
There's
others?
one in Hollywood.
Okay, Hollywood.
The Scottsdale, Vegas,
Okay.
and Houston, I think.
I'm telling you, this burger, it is unreal. If the chef could see my face when I ate this thing, I think it, like maybe this is arrogant thinking, but he'd have to get a smile on his face.
Black
because
truffle. There's mushrooms. I don't get the mushrooms.
Me neither.
But then the beef is USDA prime mixed with Wagyu
it's just so good.
with cheese.
Anyways, if he made that
Brioche
only for
bun.
himself, I'd be so mad.
Yeah, because then I just have to watch him eat it.
Yeah, you would never know what it tastes like.
And think about the people that you might be robbing of life and
yeah.
being able to be encouraged because you're too worried about feeding your own self, and
Yeah.
you're worried about building your resume and not building eulogy.
Yeah, there you go. That was good.
Yeah, I mean, trying to
Yeah.
work it
No,
back in.
well, so you might be sitting here thinking, or maybe you're listening and you're like, no, I'm not a chef. I'm not that talented. No, 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 no. Take a deep breath. All right. You are talented. Like you really are. You have things. Like maybe
Yeah.
you haven't been told what those are yet, or you haven't experienced it for yourself, or you're still trying to like figure out your own self-awareness to figure out what you're gifted in. So if that's you and you're like all skeptical about this, and you're like, no, I'm not talented. I can't do anything. Go ask people. Seriously, go find close people in your life and say, what am I good at? They'll tell you. Yeah, your friends and your family, they're way more intuitive about what you're talented at than anyone else, than even yourself. So go ask. There's
For
going to
sure.
be things that you're good at that other people aren't, and start leaning into those things.
Yep.
For other people, not for yourself.
Yeah. One of the easiest ways is to um, use your talents to impact the local church, to
Yeah.
get involved when it comes with serving,
Oh,
and
yeah.
get involved in um, your local church is doing something
Yeah.
that you can add value to.
Absolutely.
And one of the things when it talks about, we talked about investment versus consistency at the very beginning. I think you might say that you're invested in your church because you show up.
Yeah.
Every Sunday or whenever you go. Like we have young adults on Thursday nights.
Mm-hmm.
You might be really consistent on Thursday nights, but are you really invested? Like
Yeah,
how
yeah.
are you contributing your talents that do always affect other people?
Yeah.
I think once you step into that realm and you ask those people, like, hey, what am I good at? What am I talented of?
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, everyone is talented because I don't think God would ever make someone who couldn't offer anything to his body.
Yeah.
So how can you plug into the church? What are you gifted in?
Yeah.
And then figure out how, if you want, figure it out. Like so many free spiritual gifts tests online.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
just walk through one of those. And there's many ways to serve. I mean, every church has a kids ministry.
Yeah.
Most churches have youth ministries. A lot of churches need more people to hold a sign and smile and wave. And
Yeah.
like, there's a way that you can
Or if
invest.
you love cleaning and like that's super easy for you and you're like incredibly introverted, like a lot of churches have like facilities teams and you
Yep.
can help clean up the campus and keep it looking nice and pretty, and so that when new guests come on they get that feeling of like, oh man, the people
Yeah.
here care about this place, and yeah, go do that.
And you'll have so much better time serving at church if you don't feel like your only time using your talents is just at church as well.
Yeah.
If you do it throughout the week, if you do it every day, like we said, your time is not just putting out certain blocks of time to utilize an investment, but it's every time. So how can you use your talent throughout your week that you're good at, something that you naturally are able to do to affect the lives of other people so that
Mhm.
you're building a eulogy. Now let's transition into the third one.
'Kay.
Treasure. Money.
Money. Now the
The-
money talk.
This could go for a long time.
Absolutely. Money's interesting.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Very tough to maneuver.
Yeah.
Especially for a podcast that's mainly centered around young adults. You don't have to be young adult to listen to this, obviously.
Yeah.
But
So primary audience
yes.
probably doesn't have a ton of money.
And you and I sitting here don't necessarily have incredible figures of money. So we're not talking about this from a
Yeah.
100,000, $1 million view. So
Yeah.
Um, we're talking about this
Wait,
from
you don't make $1 million a year?
no.
Oh, all right, cool.
I mean,
Yeah, me neither.
maybe one day. I don't know
I'm just kidding.
when we hit the metaverse and
Ooh, metaverse.
Rock Point has that sponsorship with Tesla coming up soon.
Oh man,
When we're all driving Cybertrucks and stuff that don't get recalled.
dude, I'm in.
Yeah, we're talking about money surely on the principle. What does the Bible say about it? How do we hold it? The biggest thing is money has been given to us.
Yeah.
So we should be willing to give it back for one. But two, money is something that we have.
Yep.
And if we have it, it's good. But if it has us, it's bad.
Yeah.
The quote, the root of all evil is money. That's not true. It's
The
the
root
love.
of the love.
The love of money. Man cannot serve two masters.
Yeah, the love of all money is the root of all kinds of
Yeah,
evil. We just talked about that in our theology class.
we did.
Yeah.
We did. Because money is one of the things that will keep you from actually investing your time
Yeah.
in how Jesus would say investment is in other people,
Mm-hmm.
and to keep your life solely focused on the individual. So when it comes to money, I think of kind of three different categories, but
Mm.
for me, I think of how to be generous with your money.
Ooh.
When it comes to the church, I think of tithing. And then when it comes to the church as well, I always think of offering, which I think those two things are separate.
Mm.
I'll explain all three. Um, I believe generosity is an opportunity. I don't believe generosity is like something that you're forced to do,
Oh yeah.
but I believe it is something out of the heart of a Christian, as someone who follows Jesus, that it is your opportunity that
Mm.
you will do. It's not an obligation. I think Paul backs that up in 2 Corinthians 8 when he's talking to the church of Corinth and Macedonia. Macedonia is super poor,
Yeah.
and they decided to give everything they had, even though they didn't have it.
Mm.
And Paul's like, Church of Corinth, you have more money. Why aren't you doing that? So, but then he says the thing in verse 12, I'm not even telling you have to. You're not even obligated to do this. I'm just saying this is an opportunity to give to the church. Um, so generosity is opportunity. I think tithe is obedience. When you're tithing, you're being obedient.
Mm. Yeah.
It's a practice that started in the Old Testament, now given to us today,
Mm-hmm.
to be obedient with the money that we've been given. Practically, it's 10%. Again, in 2 Corinthians 8, it talks about how it doesn't matter the amount,
Mm.
which I think can get a little dicey when it comes to church stuff.
Yeah.
But Paul clearly says it does not matter the amount. Um, but I believe that the easiest practice is to do a 10% tithe out of obedience, because um, you are offering to God first fruits of what you make. And then third is this offering, which I'd say is kind of like the overflow
Mm.
of your heart that pairs with generosity. I don't think they're the same. I think offering is giving to your local body to be able to do more with it. For example, we have a kids building being built on site right now that takes a little extra amount of offering from people. We've donated to it, and it takes more out of you because you're investing more into your local church. But it's different than generosity, because generosity doesn't necessarily have to be for your local church. I think it happens to be for other people, and when you're realizing that your money isn't yours. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah.
kind of observation on the treasure piece.
Yeah.
Do you have any more insights on that?
Yeah, I guess my only insight would be like if the talk of money in the church is something that just kind of puts red flags in your mind or in your heart, or you're just like, it makes you uncomfortable because it's such an interesting topic. And over the years, man, there's so many examples of being handled so poorly.
Yeah.
And honestly, our generation and younger might have a little bit of an allergic reaction to the idea of tithing and giving money to the church and blah, 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 and all that. But if we can set all that aside for a second,
Yeah.
and just get to a point where the act of giving something of value to someone else, monetary value, like money, like you're giving money away freely, there's something incredibly powerful about it.
Yeah.
The church makes it relatively easy, in my opinion, to just be able to give that freely and know that it is going to a cause that is to continue to further build the kingdom. So I think it is a beautiful thing to give, and we should give. And everybody's going to be at a different place with that. So wherever you're at with that, like even if the answer is, heck no, I'm not giving to a church, then okay, that's fine. Just start asking yourself the question, okay, where can I give money? Like maybe it is a nonprofit that is a godly Christian nonprofit. I do think having roots in the Christian faith, and if it's not a local church, like there's a lot of nonprofits out there that are not like Christian nonprofits. They're just like nonprofits. Find something that has like godly biblical roots and start there. I do think at the end of the day, when you look at the local church, the body of Christ, Like that money is to go towards continuing to build up that body and to build up the local church and to continue to run and support and make it a reality for more people to come to know God.
Yeah.
So eventually, like I would say that would be like a goal, get there. If you're already there, awesome, keep going. That's amazing. Something for me is like I've always tithed. My parents have always tithed. That hasn't been like a sore subject for me.
Yeah.
And uh, we've set up our finances in a way where like that literally like we don't touch that money
Comes
ever.
off the top.
Yeah, it's just like it's gone. It's for that, and we don't even think about it as for anything else. If you're someone who needs to be like tangible with it, like very tangible, like you need to feel it, and sometimes feeling it is really good, and it can help to change your heart. Do cash or a check and like literally receive the money and then give it right away. Like that action of you just got it and now you're giving it. Like think about it. If you know you got paid in cash, like
Yeah.
you got
It
your
always
you got
hurts
your
to pay
paycheck.
with cash.
Yeah, yeah.
For
You
sure.
got paid with cash, and the moment you were handed your cash, you immediately had to give me $100. Like you're gonna feel that.
For sure.
Like you just got this money and now you're giving it away. You're gonna feel it. And I do think like when it comes to relationship with money and God and money and all of that, for some, going through that emotional interaction and process will just it'll start to bring life. At first it'll be uncomfortable and you might feel weird about it and you might even walk away going, I regret that. But give it a few times and you'll start to be like, oh man, this isn't so bad. And I do believe God will somehow miraculously give you some wonderful insight into how powerful it is that you are doing that. So that's really on the practical side of things.
Yeah.
When I think about like your treasure, your money, is figure out a way to take the steps towards doing that because it's powerful.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah. To close this out, this is a thought I had. If you want to set it up in your budget, I think you could do. A lot of people say 10% save, 10% tithe, 80% spend.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say very, very similar. Save a little, tithe whatever you feel like is necessary.
Yeah.
Give a little bit more than you maybe feel like you should.
Yeah.
And then spend on what is necessary and things that you enjoy.
Yeah.
It's okay to eat, drink, and be merry.
Yeah.
Enjoy life. You have money to be able to use, but don't let money use you.
Yeah, that's good.
So we got one last one when it comes to your testimony: time, talent, treasure, and testimony.
Yeah.
The cool thing is your time, your talent, your treasure, those have all been given to you.
Mm-hmm.
They're all God. Technically, they're all God's. God controls our time. He put it in as a construct in some way.
Yeah.
He exists outside of it. Our talent is gifted to us, and our treasure. I mean, God, all money is God's money. We just get to have some of it.
Yep.
Testimony is the thing that's our story.
Yeah, that's our story.
That is something that we fit into a larger, bigger picture, and that's something that God had a hand in. But that's the only thing that's really ours.
Yeah. Yeah, your testimony and how you live that life and live it out. And for clarification, just in my head, when you say testimony, are you talking about like my story of how I came to know the Lord and me telling it, or are you talking about like my whole life testimony, like the way I live is a testimony, like the way we live is a witness to Christ, that kind of stuff,
all of
it?
Yeah,
Okay.
your story up until maybe you came to know Jesus after
Yeah.
every piece. Your life is a walking testimony. So
Yeah, I think I get what you're saying with this one. Like this is something that we should tell and should tell often, and even look at, hey, God, can you put me in situations and bring people into my life where it makes sense for me to share what a wonderful thing it is that you came into my life, I gave my life to you, and you've transformed me into a new person. So where I think rubber meets the road on this one is, generally speaking, I think our generation and younger would fall into the category of I don't totally love talking about it. I would prefer the social justice route. Like I'm just going to do good things. I'm going to do good works.
sure.
And that's going to speak for itself. And one day someone might finally ask me like, oh, why do you do these good things? Or why are you so kind? All that. And then that's when it'll happen. and I'll finally be able to say like, oh, it's because I go to church and I love Jesus. And I remember reading this article, and there was a story of this guy who was a Christian and he was a boss, and he oversaw a couple of people, and just really good boss, super kind, super generous, all this stuff. And he finally one day, one of his employees found out that like he was a Christian, and he actually went up to his boss and he's like, "Hey, like, so you're a Christian?" And he's like, "Yeah."
Huh.
He's like, "How come you never said anything?" He's like, "What do you mean? Like, I just live my life." And he's like, "Yeah, but you never said anything." And I've been wrestling with like my faith of like, man, do I follow Jesus? Do I not? And I literally thought, I started to think it was possible to not have all this like Christian stuff and still be an incredible person because of you. So he literally thought, man, I can be all the things that a Christian can be without being a Christian, because he thought that's what his boss did. And then
Dang.
his boss is like, "No, man, like the only reason I can do all this is because of who Christ is." And it was like this crazy moment. And it's like, how did your employees not know you were a Christian? Like, how do they, like, what?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it shouldn't be a secret.
Mm-mm.
Like, people shouldn't be like, "Oh man, it's possible to be the kind of person that a Christian is without being a Christian," when they
Yeah.
look at you. Like, they should be like, "Oh no, that guy definitely follows Jesus."
For sure.
And oftentimes it's through the words we use.
I would say, yeah.
Yeah.
That old phrase that um man, I'm totally blanking on it now, but it talks about how when necessary use words or whatever.
Oh yeah.
It's like no, I believe words come into play so often when you're talking. It makes me think that um, our testimony isn't just being shared in moments; it's being shared always.
Yeah.
The idea that you shared at the earlier at the beginning of this that we talked about, and you drive through the drive-through window. It's like you might not see that person ever again, but you are sharing your testimony. You might not be sharing your story,
Yeah.
but you are sharing your testimony because you're either communicating to them, my life has been changed or my life hasn't been changed.
Yeah.
And I'm transformed. I'm a new creation, or nothing's happened to
Yeah.
me. And I think you might even be a Christian who's been born again and not sharing that you've been born again because of how you're acting and how you're living.
Yeah.
And you might actually be tarnishing your testimony because you're not actually acting the way that you're supposed to act after your life has been changed.
Yeah.
And that's so important for us to think about when it comes to not just our evangelism and when it comes to how are we sharing the gospel in our story, but man, how are we living our life every day to show people that Jesus exists and is really real through who we are and what we say.
Yeah.
It is so important for people to know
No.
that not only our story is important,
Yeah.
but also everything you're doing is actually pointing towards or away from.
Yeah. So time, talent, treasure, testimony.
Yep.
All wrapped into consistency. And when I think about all that, I look at if you invest your time, your talent, your treasure, and your testimony into where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not moving around, you're not going from
Yep.
state to state, you're not doing all these big, drastic life changes all the time. Like, you're going to see some amazing fruit.
Yep.
Like, you're going to get so rooted with where you're at. Your
Yep.
friendships are going to flourish. And I'll just speak to one kind of observation in my own life. I've had the pleasure of living in Arizona my whole life. Like, what am I, 29? 29 years, lived here my whole life. I've lived here in the East Valley my whole life, so a little subset of
You're kind of like Jesus,
Arizona. Yeah, there we go. I'm going to start my ministry next year.
Cool.
No. And then I've spent my adult years, so the last really like 9 years here at Rock Point, this church. And I hesitate to say it because I don't want it to sound like arrogant or anything like that. But the fruit from being here for this long has just been amazing.
Yeah.
The community of people that I get to see and be a part of and be shaped by is amazing. I'm at the point where year after year, it's like, man, we get to this time of year, May, and there's graduation parties, and there's high schoolers who I've known for years that are moving on to a new season of life, and just get to be a small part of that.
Yeah.
And it's been amazing. And that couldn't have happened if I had stayed here for like 3 years, got an offer for another pastoral job at another church, and took that, and then stayed there for 2 years, and then went to another church. Like, it doesn't happen without time. You don't get that kind of investment. And I am so deeply, this isn't just my place of work. This is my community. I'm so invested here. There's so many people that I just love dearly, and the thought to not be with them would be crazy. And the more I think about it, we joke about people who stay at a bad church for a really long time, or we'll talk about, oh man, I can't believe they're still there. And that's conversations I'll be in, and honestly, that's conversations we've been in. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, I can't believe they're still at that church. When I think about it, um, and this is kind of a scary thought, and I hope this isn't me, and I pray to God that like He just gives me absolute wisdom and grace in it all. But if Rock Point ever went south, like super south, I don't know if I'd see it. Maybe I would. Maybe people would show me, but it'd be so hard. It'd be so hard because I just love it here.
Yeah.
I absolutely love the people here, and there's a part of me that just wants to be faithful to a fault because I want to stick it out. I want to see where it goes. I don't want to ditch a long-term relationship, for the lack of a better term, because it got tough.
Yeah.
I want to be there for it. I want to push through. I want to fight. I want to get through it. And that's how I feel about this community. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just been super cool, and I love it. I absolutely love it. So stay somewhere for a long time. It's gonna be hard. It's gonna be difficult. It's gonna be frustrating. It's gonna be amazing, joyful, and beautiful. But you can't get the latter without the former.
Yeah. Fruit follows roots.
Amen.
And if you're not willing to put down roots, you'll never see fruit.
Yeah.
You could have left a while ago and maybe advanced your career in different positions and
Totally.
found yourself again at another church in another place, and
Yeah.
maybe higher paid, maybe a different
Maybe.
position, maybe different state. All those what ifs. And
Oof, another state. No way. I love this state.
I mean, your career might have advanced, but
Sure.
would fruit have been produced?
Yeah.
Real, long-lasting fruit. Because
Yeah.
there's plants that produce fruit that don't last long, but there
Yeah,
are
yeah.
some plants that produce fruit that last a long time.
Yeah.
And I think we want to be,
I just think there's such a beauty to the long term.
for sure.
To the long term. I mean, think about it. Our senior pastor here, he's been the pastor for 22 years now. Like,
Yeah.
we're not the church we are. We're not the community of people we are today without that.
Absolutely.
And you look at most churches and the pastor who's been there for decades, like, there's just a beauty to that community, and there's just something so cool. You look at, we got a few churches here in the valley that, man, they've changed leadership so many times, and you just watch what that does to a community of people and how hard it is. And I applaud the people who have stuck it out and stayed and wanted to see it through. But also the difficulty and the pain that has happened because of inconsistency. And we see it in the lives of our young people, our youth, our young adults, like inconsistency in relationships or being invested in a community. It just wreaks havoc
Mm.
because you have nothing rooted.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't meant to just be shallow individuals. We have to get rooted. What a Christian word, rooted.
It comes from agriculture, though. So.
Yeah, just get locked in. No cap.
You could. Oh my gosh. Riz up your investment.
There you go.
This is gonna date once the episode is years old. But
Oh yeah. We'll get made fun of.
that's fine.
Yeah.
It's on fleek.
Dang, you're getting
Never
made fun
that.
of now. You're literally there are people making fun of you right now.
That's okay. I'll be wearing my Nike Elites
There you go.
as I walk out.
Heck yeah.
Man, this was good. I don't know. It's cool to just sit and think about how we can make deeper investments into our lives and into the people around us, and help other people make deeper investments as well.
Yeah, a lot of this is just conversation, trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
You may agree, disagree with what you're hearing right now, but that's okay. It's kind of more thought experiment, get you thinking, get us thinking, and ultimately move towards becoming more holy and healthy.
Absolutely.